letting any wiggles or stretching happen that need to happen. And letting the awareness come inside. And starting with your grounding practice, whatever that is, perhaps it's awareness of breath. The body has been breathing all along, letting it continue to do its thing. And the mind simply feels from the inside what that feels like. Natural inhale, natural exhale. And as you're settling into your spot for meditation right now, if you'd like me to turn the lights down even more, please raise an arm. Okay, going to turn the lights down even more. Continue with breath awareness. And then allowing the awareness to travel to the left foot toes. The arch of the foot, the heel. Any part of the left foot that's there for you right now to feel as it is. Inside the foot, outside the foot. Perhaps including the ankle. And moving up to the left foreleg, the calf, and the shin. And feeling whatever happens to be there to be felt. And moving into the left knee. Each time the brain starts to simply think about the part of the body, noting, oh right, that's thinking, and then seeing if there's a way to feel it from the inside. Direct sensation. What's happening for the left knee? Moving up into the left upper leg, the thigh. And up into the hip socket. And then allowing the awareness to travel over to the right foot. Any of the toes that you happen to be able to feel right now. Maybe there's a sense of coolness or heat, moisture, tingling. Whatever that happens to be there, just feeling it. Expanding into all of the right foot, the ball of the foot, arch, heel, top of the foot, bones or muscles inside. Seeing if there's a way to just be very intimate and up close, feeling what's there to be felt in the right foot. toes, including the ankle. And moving up into the lower leg, the calf and the shin. And the right knee. In my practice, I was just aware of the kind of grumble sound. And the thinking thing to do is to think about, well, where did that originate? Oh, I know. That's from the subway. And that's a thought process that just went through my own head as I was meditating. And so my job is to note, oh, right, I was looking for origins, I was naming. Good to know I was doing that. And then next time, I'm going to see if there's a possibility to just stay with the grumble as it arises, stay with it as it passes away, if that's predominant in my awareness, and then return to my right knee. And coming up into the right thigh, front and back, inside and outside. Anything that happens to be there. It might just be the back of the thigh against the floor or your seat, your chair. It could be a sense of nothing. And if what you're noticing happens to be a 0, that's very welcome. And bringing the awareness up into the right hip. And then moving on to the pelvis, everything from one hip to the other. And it's true that the pelvic area could possibly, potentially be an area of high emotion. If so, you have a number of choices. Could return to breath awareness if you choose to. Or you could choose to stay with it if that's where you're at, if it feels as though self-care is in place. Perhaps feeling the genitals, the anus, the buttocks against the chair or the floor. and moving up into the lower part of the torso, the area of the belly that's below the belly button, that's in front, and in back, the lower back, and then the sides, might be called like the upper hip perhaps. Just feeling what's going on in the lower part of the torso right now. And moving up, perhaps through each vertebra of the spine, tuning into the belly button area, front and back and sides. And up into the solar plexus area. On the back of the torso is the mid-back. Perhaps you're aware of the sides of the ribs. And into the upper part of the trunk of the body, the chest and breasts in front. The back is the upper back, including the shoulder blades, the scapulas. Just noting whatever happens to be true here. Every once in a while, meditators are aware of their own heartbeat, if it happens to be showing up here. Or the breath might be here again. Or nothing. It's all welcome. And then allowing the awareness to move out to both hands. So this might include the fingers and even the fingertips. There might even be a sense of your own fingerprint at the tip of each finger. And including the rest of everything, the hand, the fingers, the palm of the hand, the back of the hand, the little joints and muscles inside the wrist. And moving up into the forearms. the elbows, inside the joint, and outside. The upper arms, and the shoulders. Since the shoulders can be places where tension sometimes pools, noting if that's true right now. And if tension happens to be there, there is an option to just feel the tension as it is. But if anything else happens to be there, a sense of relaxation, a sense of joy, something that makes no logical sense, the color blue, whatever's there, simply being present with it as it is. And bringing that same friendly awareness up into the neck. Perhaps being aware of inside the neck as well, the throat. And bringing the awareness up into the head. Perhaps starting from the bottom and going up into the jaw. The lips, the ears, the nose, the eyes, the forehead, the skull, perhaps there's a sense of inside the head, perhaps the back of the eyes, for example, or inside the mouth. and then expanding to include the rest of the body. So the head, all the parts of the head, the neck, the shoulders, both arms, the whole trunk of the body. All the way down to the tailbone. The hips, the legs, down through the feet. Simply being present with the body and befriending the body. Again and again, returning to direct experience of the whole body as it is. And then bringing the focus back to the breath itself. The practice continues, And yet I'll ring the bell to signify the end of the body scan for now. And now we engage once more in setting up. This time the setting up is for yoga. So continuing to be present with your breath and your body. As you note how it is that you want to move, taking whatever time you need to set up for a yoga practice. And I did bring a bunch of yoga ties. I put them here on the floor. I meant to hand one to everyone before we started, but that did not happen. So I think I'm going to come around like the Easter Bunny, and anyone I see lying down on the floor, I'm going to put a yoga tie next to your right hand. Those of you who want to get up, there are more yoga ties in the center of the room. I'm going to go through the yoga flow as demonstrated by Gena Bean in your homework pages. So it'll be the same flow that is on the CD that you have. It is possible to do this from a lying down position or a seated position. The CD starts from a lying down position. So if you want to do exactly what's on the CD, starting from a lying down position. But if your needs dictate being in a chair, it's fine for you to have a chair. I've been asked to turn up the volume. How's this volume? It looks okay. Up even more, I see. I'm going to do it a little bit higher. So again, the practice is just continuing. During the yoga practice, we might go through some leg lifts if you choose to do that. You might choose to spread your arms wide as part of your movement. So making sure that you have enough room around you for that. And I'll ring the bell for the official start of yoga practice. Again, tuning into the breath is highly recommended. And feeling the body from the inside, perhaps bringing the arms overhead and stretching out, elongating the spine along the floor. Or if you're seated, just growing tall. And then releasing back to your start position. If you're seated cross-legged on the floor, you would probably simply body scan the legs. For those of you who have your legs extended, the next prescribed thing to do would be leg lifts. And so starting perhaps with the hands under the buttocks, palms open on the floor, and you're kind of sitting on your hands. The hands underneath you like this help to protect your lower back. With straight legs, being aware of the leg, one leg as it rises up towards the ceiling and then falls gently back towards the floor. At your own pace, maybe the other side, leg up until it gets to the height you like, and then back down to the floor. Again, each time your breath stops, re-engaging the breath for self-care, and just playing with inner experience of your own leg lifts, doing it in the way that works best for you. Maybe one more round for each leg, if you're still doing it. And when you're done releasing the hands, coming back to the start position and simply feeling. If you're choosing not to move, you might simply body scan the upper legs and torso at this point. Those of you who are doing the yoga motion, the next thing is pelvic tilting. So starting by bending the knees and putting your feet on the floor. If there's anything under your neck, you should pull it out at this point if you're going to do any movements. To have your head lifted on a pillow could be bad for your neck if you're doing spine movements. Sounds like basketball players, but that's me, letting my thinking brain think of origins. What I actually heard was so simply tuning into that if that's what's predominant for you. And then if you are moving on to actually moving for pelvic tilting, noticing the lower back where there's a natural curve. If you were wearing a belt, it's about that area. Flattening the natural curve down into the floor and then releasing. Flattening the back, and then releasing. So you're just tuning into your own lower spine, perhaps just body scanning, but maybe if you're doing the motion, noticing each nuance for each vertebra. When the back goes down, the hips come up, and vice versa, tuning into how that feels. And as you are playing with this, if it feels good for you, it is possible to press down into the feet and let the hips come up off the floor an inch or two, and then lower back down. Each time the hips lift, perhaps playing with how high they go and how that feels for your spine. And then releasing the motion. Perhaps taking a moment to simply feel any after effects. And if your knees are still bent, you might let them gently rock left to right, like windshield wipers. And feel how that feels inside your body. Again, you're in control of how far over you go from one side to the other. Or if you choose just not to move at all, that's fine too. And then bringing that motion to stillness. And I like to lead the half-wind relieving pose using the yoga tie. So maybe finding the yoga tie by your right hand and untying it. If anyone doesn't have a yoga tie, just raise your arm and I'll bring one to you. So for half-wind relieving pose, the right knee comes up towards the chest, and you might hold on to it with your hands if that's what you choose to do, or you might use the yoga tie as a kind of stirrups, one end of the yoga tie in each hand. The full expression of half-wind relieving pose includes straightening out the left leg on the floor. But if that doesn't work in your body, figure out what does work for you. And it is recommended for knee safety that you have both feet flexed. That means the toes pointing back towards your head. Again, engaging in the breath if it stops. And if you'd like to do the next prescribed part of half-wind relieving pose, use the arm strength to pull the right knee in towards the chest. And simply feel. And then we're going to continue working with the same leg, if you're choosing to continue, using the yoga tie to wrap the yoga tie around the right leg, straighten out at the right knee, and then let the drawbridge of the leg be very low towards the floor. If you start with a nice low drawbridge, you can notice the nuances as you start bringing it up. So if the heel starts maybe an inch or two off the floor, and then inch by inch, slowly raising the drawbridge of the straight right leg, and body scanning what's happening. So if you're not doing any motion, you might just be body scanning the whole right leg, through the foot and the heel, along the hamstring, along the back, all the way up into the hip. Those of you who have reached the extension of your pose for now might choose to do a little circle. First in one direction and then the other. And see how that feels inside the hip and along the hamstring. And then bringing any circling to stillness and allowing the drawbridge of the leg, again, 1 inch at a time, to slowly lower down, paying attention to each subtle nuance. When the leg does hit the floor, perhaps releasing the yoga tie and simply feeling. And then preparing to do the same flow for the other side. So starting with half wind relieving. The left knee coming up towards the chest, perhaps holding on with the hands, with the left knee bent, perhaps putting the yoga tie around the left knee somehow. And the right leg extended on the floor if that works in your body. Though some people do have the knee bent if that's what's best for them. Flexing both feet, which means the toes pointed back towards the head. And then it's the strength of the arms that pulls the left bent knee in towards the chest. If the breath stops, engaging the breath for self-care. And simply feeling. If you'd like to move on to the hamstring stretch, bringing the yoga tie to the foot of the left leg. We're working on the same leg again. And then lowering the drawbridge of the leg. Perhaps starting with the heel of the left leg, just an inch or two off the floor. And then inch by inch, bringing the drawbridge of the leg up towards the ceiling. And anyone who chooses to, perhaps making circles in each direction. And then bringing that to stillness and allowing the drawbridge of the leg to slowly float back down, inch by inch. Perhaps releasing the yoga tie and feeling. If it works in your body, perhaps bringing both knees up this time into full wind relieving. So both knees bend up towards the chest. Maybe you hold on to them with your hands. Maybe you use the yoga tie. And if it works for your back, you might even let your whole body rock from left to right. Seeing if there's a way to feel a massage for your back against the floor. And letting the whole body come over to the left side in fetal position. So Rotating the whole body over to the left side. Maybe putting your left hand underneath you as a pillow. And simply feeling what it's like to have the left side of your body against the floor like this. The relationship to gravity. Feel free to stay here and simply body scan that feeling. Perhaps briefly bringing the awareness to sound when that happens. And then back to the body. If you'd like to move on to the twist, the top hand, the top arm is your right side. So perhaps starting with just extending the right arm up towards the ceiling. Perhaps circling that arm and tuning into your right shoulder. And playing with it, maybe going in the opposite direction. Perhaps making it bigger or smaller circles. And then bringing that motion to stillness. And if you'd like to twist for the back, allow the right shoulder to fall back behind you, opening both arms wide, both shoulders falling towards the floor. That doesn't always work in every body. So either both of your shoulders are against the floor or both of your knees are resting on the floor. You can make a choice, one or the other, if that's what's best for your spine. And then to come out of the twist, bringing the back arm, the right arm, all the way up forward and back into fetal position on the left side. And again, just feeling, just being here. And then making your way onto your back, perhaps back into full wind relieving position. So coming onto the back, both knees up towards the chest, perhaps, if that feels okay. If you enjoyed rocking from left to right an inch or two, you could do that again if you like it. And then bringing yourself all the way over to the right side in fetal position. And again, just being present with where you're at here. So some of you are in fetal position on the right side. Some of you are choosing to be in a position that works better for your body. So however your body is, just feeling it as it is. Those of you in fetal position might feel the floor underneath you on the right side. And you have the option of tuning into the left arm, that's the top arm, and extending the arm towards the ceiling. Taking a moment or two to simply feel this relationship to gravity. And then perhaps circling, if that's what's right for your shoulder. But if you're choosing not to actually do the circling, you might simply be body scanning your left shoulder without the motion. And then bringing the arm back to center, pointing up towards the ceiling. And if you'd like to do the twist, tuning into the left shoulder and letting it fall back behind you, opening the chest wide. Perhaps both shoulders fall to the floor. But if that doesn't work for you, maybe the knees need to be lifted, adjusting in your body in the way that works best for you. And feeling this twist. To release the twist, the back arm, the left arm comes forward, back into fetal position on the right side. The next couple of poses are belly down poses. So if you have an abdominal issue such as pregnancy or recent abdominal surgery, making your way to a chair, and I'll give a chair option. Those of you who are doing the belly down poses, belly down, mindfully making your way forward onto your belly. And once you're on your belly, figuring out a way to be at rest there. So perhaps the head turns to one side or the other and resting the cheek on the floor. And figuring out what's a good face down resting pose for you that works for your neck, that works for your spine. And feel free to just stay there if that's what's best for you. But if you are doing the motions, maybe starting by stretching out your spine. So the arms come overhead and reach overhead. The toes stretch behind you, elongating your whole spine as if you were a slinky toy, just like stretching out. And then releasing for a couple of breaths. And if you're going to do the half locust pose, starting by squeezing your buttocks so that your pubic triangle presses down into the floor. That makes this pose safer for your lower back. And your head should be very centered. That means the mouth, chin, or forehead right on the floor. And then stretch the right fingertips. Stretch the left toes behind you. And then each can lift back towards the ceiling. So the lever of the left leg lifting, the lever of the right arm up and back. Maybe the head and chest come up as well. One more breath if you're still doing it, and then releasing. Back to your face down resting pose. And just feeling. And then if you'd like to do the same thing for the other side, coming back to an elongated spine, head in the center, so your neck is very neutral. A squeeze for the buttocks to protect the lower back. And then we'll do the other side. I think it was the right leg kicking back, left fingers reaching and then kicking back. Maybe the head and chest comes up into it. Pressing the hip bones down into the floor is very important for your lower back. Maybe one more full breath. And then releasing. Back into your face down resting pose and just feeling. And this is your practice, so perhaps you'll just stay right where you are, if that's what's best for you. If you're moving on to the next set of poses, they start from a hands and knees position. So making your way to your hands and knees. If you have wrist issues or something that makes hands and knees position unsafe for you, please come to one of the chairs and I'll demonstrate how to do these from a chair position. So starting with, in some traditions it's called cat and dog, in other traditions cat and cow. Arching the back like a Halloween cat, rounding the spine, and then slowly creating the opposite motion. The belly drops, the tailbone and crown of the head come up. Back and forth in your own time, at your own pace. Tuning into your spine. Noticing each vertebra in one direction and then the other. And if you're choosing not to do the motion at all, that's fine. Perhaps body scanning your spine. And then bringing the motion to stillness with a flat back. And if it works for you, coming to just sit on your heels. And you can choose to just sit on your heels and feel how that feels for your knees and your thighs. If it doesn't work for your knees and thighs, come to a different position that does work for you. On the CD, I do a foot opener where from this position, just curl the toes under. Curl the toes under and then come back to sitting on your heels. It is very intense for the soles of the feet. And it's an interesting thing if through your body scans you haven't been feeling much. Many people do report a decent amount of sensation from the soles of the feet if you do this. And then releasing the feet, coming back to sitting on your heels position or whatever position works for you for a breath or two. From here, I'm going to start the neck openers. And so you can be in any seated position you want. If you enjoy being on your heels, that's fine to stay there. But if there's a more comfortable seated position, feel free to move to that. Feel free to move to a chair. Elongating the spine is a good place to start. Growing nice and tall. Perhaps even rotating the shoulders back an inch to help the spine to be tall. And for those of you who have neck issues, you might choose not to move the neck at all. In that case, you might play with moving your jaw around in a kind of way. Or you might give yourself a neck massage. That just reminded me, we would all probably like a neck massage. So if you would like a neck massage, bring your hands to your own neck and give yourself a neck massage. It's a really interesting experience to feel the massage from the inside of the neck. And then switch to feeling it from the inside of the fingers. And if you're massaging your neck, it doesn't work for you, but you want to experiment with that, maybe massaging one hand with the other hand. And I'm moving on to massaging my jaw as well. You might want to join me in that. And then I'm choosing to end my massage now so that I can move on to neck openers, but you can do whatever you want with your practice. If you're joining me for neck openers, again, elongating the spine, growing tall, the shoulders back and down a little bit. And then, as if you're nodding yes, very slowly, the chin goes down towards the chest and then lifts up. Down and up. Paying attention to your neck and what it needs right now. And then bringing the chin to a neutral position and taking an integrating breath. And then very slowly shaking the head no. But it's more like the nose goes along the horizon from left to right. The nose along the horizon. And tuning into how that feels, left to right. And then bringing that to stillness in the center. Simply feeling inside. And then allowing the head to tip like a little teapot. So the right ear comes towards the right shoulder, and then the head comes up to center, and then the left ear goes towards the left shoulder. Back and forth at your pace. Perhaps feeling a stretch along the side of the neck, from the ear down to the shoulder. And then bringing that motion to stillness, head to center for an integrating moment. And I'm going to add a shoulder opener that's not on the CD. So finding a yoga tie. This is one of my favorite shoulder openers for real life. Starting with the hands fairly wide apart. I have my hands maybe 3 feet apart on the yoga tie. On an inhale, the arms come up, and on the exhale, they fall behind. Inhaling up and exhaling forward. So opening the hands wider might be easier for certain shoulders. Those of you who are paying attention to your shoulders and feeling as though there's no resistance whatsoever and you'd like to play with deepening it, bringing the hands closer together will deepen the experience. If you're not doing this, perhaps simply body scanning the neck and the shoulders, or moving in a way that works for you. If you are still moving, allowing the motion to stop at this point and releasing the yoga tie and simply feeling. And then bringing the awareness to the spine. And bringing the hands to the hips. If you'd like to move the spine, rounding, and then straightening and bringing the chest up for a mini back bend. Curling forward and then lifting up and lifting the chest. Feeling how this feels in the vertebrae of your back. And then coming to stillness. Taking a moment to rest and feel. Earlier when we did the neck, I led with instructions to bring the nose along the horizon, left to right. So we're going to do that same motion, but for the spine. So if there were little pencils on your shoulders and you simply twisted from left to right, it would be like you're drawing a line along the horizon. So you might do it with your hands on your hips or anywhere else that works for you. Tuning into that twist motion. Left to right. And then coming to stillness for an integrating moment. And then the next motion for the spine is tipping like a teapot. So the hands can stay on the hips if you'd like, or if you're on the floor, maybe the right hand comes to the floor as the left arm lifts and tipping like a teapot towards the right. And then switching and making this work for your body. Feeling free to not move at all or to modify in whatever way works for you. Tuning into the rib cage on either side. The ribs opening. The spine tipping. Whatever's predominant in your awareness. And then coming back to center once more for an integrating moment. On the CD, the next set of poses are standing poses. So if you're choosing to come to standing, doing so with mindful awareness of how you get there. And just feeling standing. The pressure of the floor underneath the soles of the feet. The joints of the body. The balancing act, however it is. If you'd like to experiment with direct experience of balance, perhaps stepping the feet a little wider apart and then letting your weight shift from left to right. And just feeling how balance shows up in the body. The sensation of pressure for each foot. How it shifts against the floor. Perhaps even how the hips shift. And then bringing that motion to stillness in the center. Another optional play would be to rock slightly forward and back and feel how the pressure shows up against the feet with this slight shifting. And then bringing that to stillness in the center once more. I'm going to go through the details of alignment for mountain pose. So, in general, with women's hips, there should be maybe 5 to 6 inches between the feet. With men's hips, it can be closer. And engaging the feet as if you're pressing down into the floor even more. Some folks think of it as lifting the knees, so that this engagement moves from the feet up through the legs, maybe a little squeeze for the thighs and buttocks, to engage the lower body. Grounding through the pelvis, growing tall through the spine, as if you can grow 1 inch taller points of your ears lifting towards the ceiling. And engaging the arms and the fingers. You can do it with the arms down, just engage the fingers all together. And have the shoulders back and down. Or if you'd like to do mountain pose with the arms up, slowly, mindfully, bringing the arms up overhead. And then noticing the position of your shoulder. If there's 3 inches between your ear and your shoulder, see if you can get your shoulder back and down 1 more inch and make it 4 inches, elongating your neck, continuing to breathe. As we hold an extended mountain, you might feel heat build, and that's an excellent thing to be mindful of. Rotate your awareness to that very heat or tingling. Or if the mind is saying something like, when is this going to end? Rotating the awareness to that. As long as it can be done with self-care and maybe even humor, it's all good. And then lowering the drawbridge of the arms slowly so that you can feel the nuances. The shifting of the shoulders and the armpits. Once the arms come to a relaxed position, perhaps noticing maybe a little shiver or a sense of relaxation in some way. Each nuance as it happens. The moment after any yoga pose, in my practice, is kind of like receiving. There's an activity which can be akin to an out-breath, and then there's a receiving that can be akin to an in-breath. So after the mountain pose, just breathing it in, the after effect of mountain. In any yoga class, there can be an STOP moment between each pose. In this slow form of yoga, it's a little easier to really remember STOP. But it is possible in quicker forms of yoga as well. So the proceed part is that the next pose I'm leading will be a balancing pose called dancer. And we're going to be on one foot and then the other. So I'm going to get myself a chair so that I can have some help with my balance. Feel free to be by a wall or by a chair if you'd like. So perhaps starting by bringing the weight to the right side and just standing on the right foot. So the left heel might lift. You might have just like one little toe on the floor on the left side and be really standing on the right foot. And engage all those details of mountain, engaging the leg, engaging the pelvis, growing the spine, even though you're just on one leg. And then bending the left knee, bringing the left ankle to the left hand. This is a quadricep stretch. Taking an STOP moment to experience the quadricep stretch. And then if you're moving on to dancer pose, the right hand comes to the horizon in front and the left leg kicks back. A couple of breaths, coming in and out as needed. And then mountain pose, both arms up, both legs down. A lot of room between the shoulders and the ears. And then lowering the drawbridge of the arms. And receiving. Stopping, taking a breath, opening, and then proceeding to the other side, starting by bringing all of the weight to the left foot. So on the right side, maybe just the tiptoe is still on the floor to help with balance. And engaging mountain pose, even though you're just on the left leg. So the left foot is pressing into the floor, engaging the leg up through the hip, elongating the spine. And then if you're doing this, the right ankle comes up to the right hand, the right knee is bent, quadricep stretch. Taking a moment or two in the quadricep stretch. And if you are proceeding to dancer pose, the left hand comes to the horizon, the right leg kicks back. A couple of breaths, coming in and out as needed. And then mountain, both arms up, both legs down. And lowering the drawbridge of the arms. And receiving. Stopping, taking a breath, opening to this after effect of pose. And then the proceeding is to know that we're coming into Shavasana pose, the final pose for yoga practice. And it is a lying down pose, usually. Those of you who prefer to come to a chair can sit in a chair, or you could be in any meditation position you want. But the standard Shavasana pose is lying down on the floor on your back, if you choose to do so. So mindfully making your way to that position, whatever your position is. Perhaps a stretch or a yawn. And I'll go through the details of Shavasana pose. Just as there are details for mountain pose, there are details for Shavasana as well. Shavasana translates into corpse pose sometimes. Sometimes I call it final resting pose. The idea is that in Shavasana pose, there is a way that you're letting go of all the things that draw you in about your life. And that's how it's related to a corpse. There's a complete letting go. And so in our Western culture, there can be like negative associations with that, but in my practice, I find it quite inspiring, that idea of completely letting go. So sometimes squeezing all the muscles helps for that let go. So you might want to squeeze through the feet and the legs up to the buttocks, and then let go. And then you might want to squeeze the hands into fists and squeeze the arms up to the shoulders, and then let go. And you might want to squeeze the face into a prune face, and then let go. So the idea is to let the legs be completely loose, all the way up into the hips. So sometimes it can be fun and nice for relaxation to lift up both legs and then let them flop loudly right to the floor. Blah. And let that relaxation happen in the hips so that the feet are just loosely splayed. And then you can do the same thing for the arms. Lift them up into the air and let them flop blah, to the floor. And there's a tiny detail for the shoulders. If you tune into your armpits and rotate your armpits a millimeter towards the ceiling so that your shoulder blades slide back and down your back, that can create a little bit more opening for your chest. And then simply receive. Receive Shavasana pose. And also receive the after effects of any of the other poses that you've done. as we continue the practice. Feeling deeply what it is that you're actually feeling. Being present to this moment. And there are times in mindfulness practice where a little inspiration can be quite helpful. And there is a MBSR practice called the mountain meditation, which is designed to help us with the figuring out process. How do I come back again and again to this very moment? It's a very deep question. During this semester, I've mentioned the concept of koans. Questions that, in a Zen tradition, there are usually an answer. And yet in our more Western concepts of looking at koans, just sitting with the question without reaching for any answer can be quite inspiring. How do I sit with this? How do I sit with this too? And I'll read a quote from Jon Kabat-Zinn about the mountain meditation. When it comes to meditation, mountains have a lot to teach, having archetypal significance in all cultures. Mountains are held sacred, embodying dread and harmony, harshness and majesty. Rising above all else on our planet, they beckon and overwhelm with their sheer presence. In meditation practice, it can be helpful sometimes to borrow these wonderful archetypal qualities of mountains and use them to bolster our intentionality and our resolve to hold this moment with an elemental purity and simplicity. The mountain image held in the mind's eye and in the body can freshen our memory of why we were sitting in the first place, and of what it truly means each time we take our seat to dwell in the realm of non-doing. Mountains are quintessentially emblematic of abiding presence and stillness. And right now, in your very own practice, you might be doing your own thing. It could be breath awareness, body awareness, open awareness. And if that's what's serving you best right now, you're very welcome to stay with it. And I will be leading the mountain meditation. And you can engage with it and play with it in whatever way works best for your practice in the moment. So knowing that you are where you are and feeling how you feel, it is possible to mindfully bring an image to mind and know that you have an image in your mind. So if you're doing the mountain meditation, starting with bringing to mind an image of a mountain, probably one that you like or enjoy. So it could be a real mountain where you have been, and so you might be bringing to mind memories of that mountain when you've hiked it or been there in some way. It's also possible to use the image of a mountain that doesn't exist, such as Mount Olympus. As John Kabat-Zinn said, we're working on borrowing qualities that inspire us to stay present and aware. So bringing to mind your mountain and seeing if there's a way to awaken mountain-like qualities inside yourself in this very moment. And you can do that in any way that works for you. Yet as a mindfulness meditation, the intention is not necessarily to get lost on the mountain somehow or escape to the mountain. The idea is to be present and here, and yet borrow mountain-like qualities so that you can awaken inspiration to stay present. So in a cycle of a day, the sun rises and shines light on the eastern side of the mountain. As the sun continues up, it comes overhead and then starts to set on the western side of the mountain. It goes under the horizon, and then there's a cycle of darkness from twilight through midnight to early morning. And through the cycle of this day, a mountain is still a mountain underneath it all. The arising of patterns of light and then darkness does not affect the mountainness, the stability. It doesn't affect that which makes a mountain present. And so as we in this room are sitting here with what's true for us, the feeling of our breath, the feelings in the body, any emotions that arise and pass, if you're choosing to do this, perhaps seeing if there's a way for you to stay very grounded and still and present through the cycles of light and dark that happen here. A mountain is itself through all the cycles of the day. And the mountains that are here in New England at this time of year are starting a springtime. So it's still cold. There's still ice, especially at the tops of the mountains. And yet the trees are getting ready to bud. And underneath both the ice and the movement of sap in the trees, the mountain is still being itself. The mountain is abiding, even with the anticipation that springtime can kind of denote. And as spring progresses, the weather will get warmer. The buds will grow and then even produce leaves or flowers. And emotional qualities might go from anticipation to exuberance. And still the mountain is an abiding presence underneath it. and the spring will go deeper into heat and become summer. Animals will be running around. Hikers might come and visit the mountain. And sometimes I call these human visitors to the mountain tourists. And the tourists come and look at the mountain and decide things. Oh, that mountain is so tall and wonderful. Oh, that mountain is too tall and too smelly, whatever it is, right? The tourists have their opinions of the mountain. And yet that doesn't really affect the mountain's being, the mountain's abiding presence. When people come and go, the mountain is still. And the mountain is still the mountain. Even through all the hiking and picnicking that the humans are doing, the frolicking that the animals are doing, the flowing that the water is doing. And so one of the questions for us as meditators is, during times of enthusiasm, is it possible for me to still abide and be present here? And the summer deepens into itself, and things start to come to fruition. A time of harvest. In the New England area, there's a long time of autumn that starts with first harvests. And then more and more things ripen as the weather starts to cool. And tourists who come by have their opinion of the colors of the leaves, the flavor of the apples. And the mountain is just being itself. Through the coolness and the shortening of the days. And the time of harvest ripens and passes into the time of compost, where there are no more leaves left on the trees. And the snows start to fall. And through this time of coolness and wind, the mountain is still the mountain. Underneath it all. The weather might very well give the mountain a weathered experience, a weathered look. But that does not change its fundamental nature. And as the snows deepen and ice piles up, the mountain is still and present through the winter. And the tourists might visit. They might go for a ski vacation. And they might have their opinions about the quality of the snow, or the way the trail is, or the trees interfere in some way. They have their opinions. And the mountain is just the mountain, being itself, being present, abiding. And as we're borrowing these qualities from a mountain, there can be a koan type question. Can I be still and present even when things feel cold, even when it feels as though I am frozen under ice in some way? Can I be here with it, being what I am? And interestingly, a time of ice or snow is not forever. It arises, it stays for a while, and then it passes away. And the early time of spring starts to show through the ice. The sap starts to move in the trees once more. The mountain transcends particular shape or form and is simply here now. This is a poem about mountains by Lipo. The birds have vanished into the sky, and now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. And in my practice, the meaning of that poem has to do with Shavasana pose, really. In Shavasana pose, I allow all of the racing mind to fade and awaken mountain-like qualities. So if I'm sitting with a mountain until only the mountain remains, it's like my racing mind that's chasing after things is allowed to finally rest so that only mountain-like qualities remain. So I'll read it a second time for you to engage with it in your own way. The birds have vanished into the sky, and now the last cloud drains away. We sit together, the mountain and me, until only the mountain remains. practice and the present moment awareness continues. And it is now time for dinner practice. For dinner practice,